2023 looks to be another exciting year for MMORPGs. If you guys haven't seen the news, we know that Blue Protocol is set to launch here in 2023 with cross-play, cross-support, something that they're working on, and it's coming to console, Xbox, PS5, and PC. This is something that I'm personally very thrilled on. If you guys want more of my Blue Protocol coverage, check out Ginger Blue Gaming. The link will be in the description. But this isn't just about Blue Protocol. This is Throne of Liberty. This is so many more games are right on the horizon, and enough in a way that it could really kind of satiate a lot of us gamers. I know if you guys follow Narc at all, one of his lines, he's just a gamer looking for a good MMORPG. And I kind of, every time I hear that, I go, well, you got choices, buddy. Like, you don't have to wait till 2025 for Ashes of Creation to enjoy a good MMO right now. You might not be your perfect MMO or your utopian MMO. And the downside is, the bad news, those don't exist. But today I want to talk to you guys specifically about the generational issue of MMOs. Something that I haven't seen a lot of people kind of talk about. And so I want to sit down and talk about it because this is the world I live in. I got, kids, I got a family, I got lives. I grew up on the old school classic MMOs. Never really got into World of Warcraft for some reason or another. And here we are today looking at 2023 and a future that I think is exciting. I think the genre isn't dying, but it is changing. And for some people, that can be a scary thing. So hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name's Brian. If you happen to be new around here, but if you're a returning subscriber, well, my name is still Brian. We're going to go with that one today. Thank you so much for coming back, by the way. I do appreciate you. And we're going to have some fun. If you guys feel like these videos, these discussions earn it, be sure to hit that like button. And for doing so, I'm going to toss in a picture of this anime waifu for you, just for hitting that like button. Thanks, guys. Now, let's talk about stuff here, because that's what we do. We talk about video games. First and foremost, MMOs are one of the most unique genres in gaming. They're also incredibly challenging to cover. When we talk about them, when we talk about MMOs, there is a generational divide that is in part for many things. One, how you came into MMOs. That tends to be how they feel set for you. If World of Warcraft was your first, well, MMOs are like World of Warcraft. Maybe they were like World of Warcraft pre-Kata, or maybe they are more like WoW post-Kata. Like, your entry point into the genre in a way kind of set the mold. And there's a reason why WoW set the mold, is it became accessible to so many people. What came before it, which is where I ended up starting with Final Fantasy XI, wasn't necessarily accessible. It was grueling. It was done in a way to actually create empathy among players, kind of a survive together, die alone mindset. But WoW kind of shifted that model, keeping a lot of its hardcore components, but also making it more accessible for people to just pick up and play without having to jump through endless amounts of hoop. And if there's any Final Fantasy XI players out there, with as much as I love that game, we all know Play Online is the first world boss of that game. Just getting signed up and just getting into the game, if you did that, you're going to be just fine, right? Like, that's kind of the case. And that's one of the reasons why I'm also hyper interested in this Horizon 11 project that's going on, something I've been kind of watching carefully, but maybe we'll talk about more of that in another video. But generationally, my mold got formed by Final Fantasy 11, and so it ends up being kind of the case that I judge all MMOs going forward. But this isn't something about we all know. When you go look at the MMO subreddit, the most hotly contested, and perhaps the best way to sum up that subreddit is it's the best place to go hate MMOs if you're an MMO fan. Like, everybody, like, there's definitely going to be something that's going to ruin your day on that subreddit, because you have a lot of impassioned fans looking for something that they haven't seen replicated. I've seen a lot of content creators kind of talk about this as well, but the genre has and will continue to change. I think that's in its nature to do so. But I want to call out one comment here real quick, because Pip says the whole reason we cannot get more people into MMOs is because every time you bring them up, it's compared to World of Warcraft. If they like it, they may try it. If they don't, they skip it. This has doomed the growth of the MMO genre, even if your game is completely different. Minecraft is more like an MMO than most games, but gets to define itself as something completely different. There's a lot of truth here in Pips' comment, and we're going to kind of bring this comment to life through the rest of the majority of this video. What do I mean by generational? We talked about it in the sense of like how your mold got set for the MMO, but now let's talk about it with what also is happening. Now, this is something I see very, very clearly as I watch my kids become gamers, become and grow into who they are and into who they will be. We still have a long journey with them. They're not like teenagers yet, but that's going to be something that's going to happen here in the near future. And along those lines, I also get to see what games the kids are playing and they're talking about. I also get to see what the teenagers and other friends who have kids are playing and are talking about. When we get together with family and etc., like I get to sit down and hang out with all my nieces and nephews and cousins of all ranges, and they get to tell me what they're playing and what they're interested in. And I get to share with them the MMORPG, and we do have some MMO players amongst us in the family. It's a really cool family. I'm very, very lucky to have them. But on those lines, like you can clearly see the predominance of this free-to-play model. And why is that? Well, I think the reality of it is many things. A lot of people like to chalk it up to greed. And yes, there are greedy people and there are bad business models. A business model doesn't make a good game, but a business model can sustain a good or a bad game for any amount of time. Most likely, if it's a good game, good business model makes it go further. But when it comes down to it though, you have an entire generation. I'm talking an entire generation of gamers, like 10, 20, getting on 20 years now, that have all been trained in this model. For a lot of these players, the sell isn't the beautiful world or the gameplay or the story. Those aren't selling it. What's confusing to many of these players is why would I spend money up front and then spend money every month? The reality, as much as I enjoy the subscription model, I think there are going to be probably two games that ultimately can really hold onto that submodel. I'm very curious as to see what happens with Embers Adrift. I'm very curious to see what happens with Ashes, because at its core, that's, I think, the best fair model when it comes to these MMOs, because it doesn't feel like the devs have to constantly come back to the well, constantly kind of have to play on your psychology, which we all know only works for a period of time. At some point, that if you feel like you've been tricked, you'll excuse it for a good game. But as soon as that game kind of starts to disappoint, I think that only adds kerosene to your anger and fire, because you feel kind of, betrayed or tricked and many different kinds of emotions in that regards. But back to the topic at hand. A lot of gamers are kind of, in a way, antithetical. And we're seeing things like that. We're seeing things like Game Pass coming into prominence. We're seeing things like PlayStation Now, very value-oriented. But for the subscription, you get endless amounts of games as opposed to just one. Where I would counter, and I make the pitch, you get endless amounts of content, but it's a harder sell because that is the industry and that is the kind of the world that we live in. And so that's where we're starting to see the emergence of free-to-play, battle pass-driven, cosmetic shop MMOs. And whether you like them or not, I'm not here to sit here and try to say, hey, get with the program. That's not what I'm trying to here to do. I empathize with you if you're in that camp. But I'm here to say, kind of in a way, MMOs are going to have to try and figure out a business model that doesn't end up suffocating the whole. I think one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons why you see actually so much MMO tribalism connects into the idea that if you're paying a sub, you're supporting a game. If you're not paying a sub, you're not supporting that game. Rightfully so. But paying a sub does kind of put you into and back into that game. It kind of builds stronger communities. One of the reasons why I like the subscription model. Many reasons actually why I like the subscription model, but when it comes down to it, is it does keep you kind of in one spot as opposed to trying out many different flavors. Now, back to Pips' comment. Let's bring that back up here. Talking about the whole reason we can't get more MMOs is because every time you bring it up, it's compared to World of Warcraft. This is true, like in terms of a one-hit wonder, right? Obviously, WoW is coming up on 20 years. WoW did something that hasn't ever been done before, And I don't see anybody being able to do that and maintain that for as long as they have until some greater leap of technology comes along. Something that becomes so blatantly like, holy smokes, I can't believe they pulled that off. That it becomes that phenomenon. That's something what the Battle Royale has done. You might not like Battle Royales, no judgment. The Battle Royales have taken technology and taken some of these things that MMOs pioneered to begin with and expanded upon those within this system, within that free-to-play, within a sustainable business model that has generated them billions and millions of dollars year over year. It has then been able to siphon and take people's interest and investment and put it into these buckets. And then you have the whole content creation and streaming aspect. These things aren't, unfortunately, just like in a bubble. When MMOs came out, they were a darling of the time. Industries were, and media was fear-mongering over how addictive they are. And they still are addictive. They still can consume your time if you let them. But when it comes down to it, I think subscription fatigue with everything else asking for just $10 a month or $15 a month, people are going to end up gravitating away from the genre unless the genre can evolve, and hopefully evolve in a healthy way. Yes, I still think that there will be subscription-based MMOs, but I don't think we're seeing the domination of that. And at some point, that subscription might become a chain rather than keeping, the lights on and keeping everything kind of humming along smoothly. It's going to be interesting to see one way or the other what happens over the next couple of years. But as we look towards 2023, we're looking at a year filled with possibility and filled with some big launches. And the one thing I would just say as perfect to kind of leave you on, for those of you who are still here, is it's not about how you launch. It's about how you kind of struggle. It's about how you persist in that existence, about how you get up again and again. That's why the subscription model, I think, was so nice, because it was saying everybody's on the same playing field. Here you go. But now it's a little bit different, because it's not about it's not about just like, hey, yeah, it's cool to take a break, because I've seen a lot of people take breaks from games and continue to financially support them. But it's also about like, okay, we need to be working on bringing them back in. We've seen the MMO and the newest round of them really kind of start to shift into this seasonal model mindset. And that might frustrate you if you're an old dog, I get it. It might frustrate you to hear that. You might long for that game that you can just sink your teeth into, that world you can just sink your teeth into. And that's the thing. That's why I want to encourage more investment and more people to play the genre. So within the genre, we can have the genre that's right for you. MMO is such a wide-reaching and far-reaching label that when you start to really break it down, how you and I might define MMOs completely different based off of how we had our mold set back when we were young, well, those could almost be their own genres in and of themselves. But regardless of all that, none of this is to set doom and gloom. This is actually me, very hopeful, thinking that we're about to be on the precipice of the third age, the new golden age of the MMO, one in which that we see more games being created and more games able to sustain a healthy player population and players willing to try out more MMOs every time and to return to them. It's not necessarily about, hey, you tried this game and you're never going to go back to it. I think studies have shown, I think what we have seen time and time again is content is king. And if they are communicative and they respond and they add in new things, players will dip and dip out. If you have that hook, if you are something special, if you're doing something worthy of a return. Anyway, guys, I thank you so much for your time today. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one. But until then, take care.